Ladies and gentlemen and programmers, we're going to do project 1B, the potentiometer. We're going to code it now that you've got it all wired up. All right, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to come over to Google Classroom, and you're going to go to the Robotics project, and you're going to, oh, where'd it go? You're going to go to the Arduino Robotics project lesson 1B, and you're going to find the code. Okay, here's a sketch. I don't know how it's going to look for you because I own it, so it's a little bit different. But for me, I'm going to open it up in a new tab, and then I have to actually get to the whole thing. So I'm going to scoot you back here. Okay, and there it is right there, 1B. So I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to download that. Okay, and so there it is. So what you're going to do is you don't want to take the zip folder. You do not want to put the zip folder in your project because it could cover over all your work. So what we're going to do is we're going to 7-zip it, and we're going to extract it here, okay? And then this, we're going to copy this, and we're going to go into our folder with our name on it over here, and we're going to paste it in there. Now, I already did, so I don't have to, but make sure you get that into your folder with your name on it, into your intro to programming folder. All right, and then you can double-click on it, open it up, and we're going to have something that looks a little bit something like... No. Where did it go? Oh, here it is. It's going to look a little something like this, okay? And so we're going to have to start doing a little coding in here. But before we do a little coding in here, we're going to have to learn some coding. All right, so we downloaded, opened the sketch. Okay, now write this down in your notes. A variable is like a box in RAM. Variables have data types of what can go to the box. Integers are whole numbers. Okay, write that down in your notes. Remember, you're alternating each project, 1A, 1B, 1C, who's taking the notes. So write down the name of the person who's taking the notes. All right. You must declare variables before you use them so that the computer knows about them. In this sketch, we declare 2 integer variables and at the same time initialize them to specific values. We're doing this so that further on in the code, we can refer to the pins by name rather than number. We're going to see what that looks like. All right. So I want you to write this down, okay? But I want you to get a whole page, right, and put a lot of space between these because as we go, we're going to fill in some blanks on this stuff. So write this down, put a lot of space, write this down, a lot of space, write this down, a lot of space, and then write this down, okay? Write all those notes down, okay? All right, so, so declaring a variable is like making a box. So when we're going to write something like, eventually we're going to write this code, int pot position. So that means potentiometer position. Okay, so basically we're creating a box called pot position, and the only thing that can go into it is an integer, which is a whole number. Okay, so then initializing a variable is like putting something into the box for the first time. So if we say int lead pin equals 13, we create a box in the RAM or a space in the RAM called lead pin. The only thing that can go into it is an integer or a whole number, and then we're actually putting something into the box 13. So this one, we're declaring a variable, int position. This one, we're declaring a variable, int lead pin. And then we're also initializing it. We're assigning or putting something into it for the first time. Okay? So add this to it. So we already wrote this. Now you're going to add this to it. You're going to add this to it. Okay? So let's talk about it more. Okay, so we need a thing called a potentiometer position. We're going to store in a box where our potentiometer is. So we're going to turn the potentiometer, We're going to turn the potentiometer, and we're going to adjust the speed of the flashing light, right? So remember this thing. So we're going to turn this little knob, okay, and it's going to adjust the speed of the flashing light. Okay, so we've got to store the value of this somewhere. We're going to store it in that box called pot position. Okay, so we have our space in the RAM. The only thing that can go into that box is a whole number. If we try to put a decimal in there, nope. If we try to put string in there, no. If we try to put a Boolean true or false in there, nope. The only thing that can go in there is a whole number. Okay, initializing the variable. So when we say int lead pin, we create a box in the RAM called lead pin. The only thing that can go into it is a whole number. And then we actually store the number 13 in that box. So anytime we say, hey, what's in lead pin? It'll say, oh, 13. So lead pin and 13 are the same thing. And so this is going to be useful later, and this is going to be useful later. Let's see how. All right. So let's code the instance variables or global variables. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little something like, let me get myself set up here so we can see. Okay, so what we're going to do is you're going to open this code here, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger to see. Hold on, I'm going to hit pause on this video, make this text bigger to see. Okay, so what I did, if you want to make yours bigger, I went to Edit, increase font size to make that bigger. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to come over here. This is the instance or global variable declaration area. So we're making these boxes where we can store useful information. So we're going to say int sensor pin equals 0. Okay, so the sensor pin is now equal to 0 with a semicolon. So we have that, we've created a box called sensor pin. Only thing that go into it is an integer, that's its data type, and we've initialized it to 0. We're going to do another one. So we're going to say int pot position. Okay, so now we have an empty box called pot position, and there's nothing in it. Okay, and so eventually we're going to initialize that. We're going to do that later. We're going to look at that later. Okay, and then we're going to say int lead pin equals 13. Okay, so again, we declared a variable called lead pin, and we're initializing it at 13. So this one's initialized, this one's initialized, this one's declared, but not initialized. Okay. All right, let's see what we're doing in our spiel. Okay, read this, and okay, so we have our, let's go back here. So we're done with the instance variable declaration area. So let's just take a look at it. Okay, so we've declared all of our instance variables. So we have all these little boxes that are going to hold the integer numbers for us that we're going to use later on in our project. Okay. All right, so now we're going to come down to our constructor. So the constructor, remember, is a special method. It runs one time. It always runs right at the beginning, and it's a great place to set things up. All right, so the first thing we want to do is start a serial connection with the computer. Okay, so let's take a look and see what that's going to look like. So you're going to say, let's just get it coded. So you're going to click right here, and you're going to say serial, that's not right, begin. And then you're going to do that, and then you're going to go inside there, and you're going to type in 9600. So we'll do that. Okay, so now you have this thing called pin mode 13 output. Now this is code that you guys have typed it in project 1A. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to modify this. So instead of 13, we're going to say LED pin. Okay, well, what's LED pin? Well, we just did it up here. So LED pin equals what? 13. So whenever we say LED pin, that's the same as saying 13. Now, if I'm going to say pin mode 13, it's like, what does that do? I can't remember what that does. Well, if we call it LED pin, it's like, oh, that's the pin connected to the LED. So all we've done here is that we're just using this variable to give a name that's more meaningful. It does the exact same thing. It's just easier to understand. So now we're using our variable to set pin 13 as an output that can be set to high or low. All right, so now that sets changes the little Arduino board. It's like, oh, okay, pin 13 is going to be output. So we're going to either send electricity or not send electricity. So we can use that to turn an LED on and off. Okay, let's jump over to the spiel here and see what it says. Okay, what is this? Oh, we got to figure out what this code does. Serial.begin.9600. Okay, so let's figure out what that code is going to do. All right, so let's figure out what this code right here does. Look, actually, it's going to do nothing because I didn't put in a semicolon here. Let's put in that semicolon. Oops. Don't do that. All right, let's put in our semicolon. Okay, so now that's going to work. All right, so what I'm going to do is you don't need to do this, but I'm going to go ahead and upload this to the board, right? So I'm sending this code to the Arduino board. And then what I can do is I click on the serial monitor, and where'd it go? serial monitor. No serial monitor. Okay, so now let's try again. We'll click on this. There it goes. So it basically makes this connection where we can see what the value of the potentiometer is. All right, so right now we've hooked this thing up, but we haven't finished our code, so nothing's appearing here, but eventually it's gonna. All right, so let's go back to our project. Okay, so we have, what do we have so far? Okay, so we've got our constructor set up. Okay, so we've set it up like, okay, we're connecting to the serial monitor, the serial connection set up, and then we change this to where we like, okay, yeah, we can run our LED pin. Let me see if there's anything else going on here. Okay, I think that's it. Okay, let's go back to our spiel and see what's happening. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to say pot position equals analog read sensor pin, semicolon. Okay, so basically now what we're doing is this initializing it as an assigns a value to the pot position. Okay, so let's go ahead and write that code, and then we're going to see what that looks like. Let's get that code back up here. Okay, so we're going to come over here, and we want to read the position of the potentiometer. Okay, so we're going to say pot position. So there's our variable, equals, we're using the assignment operator, equals okay, so it's going to look like that. Pot position equals analog read.sensor pin. Okay, so here we have this thing, pot position. It was an empty box, right? So we had our empty box. We never assigned anything to it. We never initialized in it. Now, what we're going to do is, so it's going to read. Okay, so it's going to say analog read sensor pin. Well, what's sensor pin? 0, right? So we hook this thing up to 0, and so it's saying, hey, what's coming through this wire right here? What's coming through this wire right here? And so it's going to read whatever's coming through there, and it's going to save that value in our variable called pot position. Okay, and so now this thing has a value in it. So based on how I turn that little knob, the value is going to be different. Okay, so we're reading the position of the potentiometer, and then we're storing the value in pot position. Okay, so now this one is being used as a true variable because it changes whenever we turn that knob. It changes from one number to the next number. Okay, all right. So now we're going to set the pot position to a number between 0. Oh, that's what we just did. Okay. All right, so the next thing we want to do is print the value of the pot position in the serial monitor on the computer. Okay, so now we're going to say serial dot print line, and we're going to say pot position. Okay, and so basically, so serial is that little box that we can pop up. So we're talking to that guy dot, and we're going to say print line, so that guy already knows how to do that. Somebody built that serial monitor. He already knows how to print line. But what do we want him to print? Well, we want him to print pot position. Whatever number we stuck in there is what we want to do. Okay, so let's see if we can upload this thing and get this to work. Oh, it doesn't like it. Let me see what's going on here. Oh, I spelled it wrong. Okay, so it's got to be spelled exactly the same way, pot position. Okay, so we're going to go Control Copy, and we're going to just click in here, Control V. Okay, so now we should be able to upload it and get it to work. Okay. All right, so now if I open up my COM6, okay, so it's showing some numbers here, and so if I change, you can't see it, but I'm moving the little thing around. So depending on how I move the little potentiometer knob, it's going to do different numbers. Okay, so it's going to put in different numbers. All right, so far here's what we've done. So we've created a variable, we declared it pot position, and then down here we're assigning values to it. So every time it just keeps going over this loop really quick over and over and over again, and so every second it's going to read the sensor pin from the potentiometer. The sensor pin is 0, so it's going to look at that pin 0, and then it's going to print it. Okay. All right. So now here's what we're going to do. So now this is code that you guys had before. This was from 1A. So digital write 13 high, delay 1,000. Okay. So this is always going to blink the light at the exact same speed, right? So what we're going to do now is instead of 13, that's hard to remember. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to put, instead of 13, we're going to put LED pin. Okay. So we're going to use our variable. So that's not going to change anything. It just makes more sense. Okay, and same thing down here. We're going to change the 13 to LED pin. Okay, and then here's where we're actually going to make a difference. So instead of always delaying 1,000, we're going to delay pot position. Okay, so we're going to use that variable, and this variable, what does it do? It varies. Okay, and so now when we upload this, okay, now it's going to change the project where when I move, so we can see it kind of how you would expect it. When I move the potentiometer knob, it changes how fast it blinks. Okay, because the delay is going to vary, just like we saw from this thing. It's basically using these numbers. Okay, whatever number is showing up here is what the delay is going to be. Okay, so when I change that, when I move this thing, the delay is slower, right? If I move it up, the delay is going to be longer. Okay, all right. So let's take a look at our spiel again. Let's get all the knowledge we can. So that middle pin sends out a voltage which varies from 0 to 5 volts, and it basically the computer takes that 0 to 5 volts and makes it from numbers 0 to 1,023. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Write this, add these pictures to your notes. Okay, so when you initialize a variable, so we had the code int pot position, so we had our empty box. We declared our box called pot position in the RAM. The only thing that can get stored into it is a whole number. And then when we said pot position equals analog.read sensor pin, so the computer's reading that voltage from that middle pin of your potentiometer. It converts it to a 0 to 1,023, and it's going to shove it into that box, right? So now this line of code right here is assigning numbers into this box, and they change, and depending on how they change, then it's going to change the speed of that thing. So we already looked at what that line of code does. It pops up that serial monitor and places values in there. Okay. Okay, here's a quiz question. Why did we replace the number and the parameters with a variable? So why did we change that from 13 to LED pin? Why did we change that from 13 to LED pin? And why did we change that from 1,000 to pot position? What does that do? Okay, this doesn't make any changes, but there's a reason we did it. This definitely makes changes. What are they? All right, all right. So show me your working project and have me sign off on 1B before going on to the coding challenges. And after I sign it off, go on to the coding challenges. I want you to have different people on your team do it. Try changing the range. Okay, number 1, try multiplying, dividing, or adding to your sensor reading so that you can change the range of the delay in your code. For example, you can multiply the sensor reading so that the delay goes from 0 to 2046 instead of 0 to 20,023, and add more LEDs. So do these 2 coding challenges 1 and 2 and show them each to me when you get them done. All right, that's it for me and hopefully for you.